You are listening to the Russell Brand Fancast. So on this episode of the Russell Brand Fancast, we're going to talk about rebrand, which most people will probably already know of from before Russell was really famous, I suppose you could call it. A lot of mixed feelings and thoughts about rebrand. I know Russell himself has actually said if he could ever get away with actually releasing them on DVD, he would have done. But he knows a lot of people who work with him would have something to say about that, I guess. But as someone who's watched them recently, I think they're quite good actually. I quite like them. But then I suppose, being the host of the Russell Brand Fancast, I would say that really. So without a doubt, my favourite episode has got to be Dad Fight, where Russell challenges his own dad to a boxing match. And actually, I mean, considering neither of them are actually boxers, it's quite a good fight really. It was quite enjoyable to watch. Obviously, if you strip back the entertainment value of it, there's actually a real serious reason as to why Russell's challenged him. But you know, both Russell and Ron, they take it in good humour, and actually, I think they go for a pint afterwards. This was obviously before Russell went into recovery, so it's before he got off the drugs and got off the alcohol. So it's quite weird to see Russell, like, obviously we know Russell as Russell from maybe, you know, if you're like me, you've been a fan since sort of Big Brother's Big Mouth, you know, them sort of days. You sort of know Russell Brand, the ex-addict, the sex addict. You know, Russell Brand, I don't like to say womanizer because that doesn't sound good, but I suppose in a way that is kind of true. So, you know them, you know, and you know the Russell now, you know, the more spiritual, the more thoughtful Russell, you know, the Russell who's got a daughter, the Russell that's married, and then you go and watch back to the early 2000s where he's still on drugs, he's still on alcohol, and it's very odd. It seems very odd now to think, you know, you look at it, he sounds the same, he doesn't even look the same. You know, his hair's different, his face is different, the way he dresses is really different. I know we shouldn't focus on that sort of stuff, you know, the only thing that's basically the same is his voice. He sounds the same. He sounds like Russell Brand, but he doesn't look like him. It's very odd. But it's a great series, and Dad Fight, without a doubt, is my favourite. I watch that one quite a lot. I don't know what it is about it I enjoy so much. I don't know, maybe I'll challenge my dad to a boxing match. I won't win, but yeah, it's just a great episode really, actually. And although I think a lot of people would maybe disagree, maybe say it's great is going too far, but you know, it's Russell. I liked it. I thought it was good, and it's quite interesting, actually. If you watch that, and then you skip forward to Russell Brand as the Second Coming, actually, and there's a scene on that film where Russell's in a car with his dad, and Russell's talking to Ron. And then they're both in the back of the car, and someone else is obviously driving. They're both in the back of the car. Russell's talking, and then Ron says, I think he says something like, he gives a direction, I don't know, let's just say for argument's sake, take a left here. When Russell was still talking, and then Ron gives the direction, and it says, carry on. And Russell just goes quiet. It's really bizarre. And it's only then you realise, oh yeah, that is still the same person. That is the same bloke that did the fight with his dad all that time ago. So that's probably my favourite episode. Let me know what your favourite episode is. You can join the Anchor app and send me a voicemail message that I can add in to a future episode. Also, let me know what your least favourite episode is, because I'll tell you what, that's just as interesting, really, isn't it? Wanky wanky! So, another part of Rebrand, which this is going to tell you everything you need to know about me, really, that I actually really enjoyed, was the episode where Russell, and forgive this, people, if you forgive me for this, but wanks off a bloke in a lavvy. I don't know why. I don't know. It's just one of them things. Like, obviously, you don't actually see him do it. You can be pretty sure he did, but you don't actually see it. But it's quite interesting, really, to realise actually that this bloke that I do a whole podcast about, this bloke that I went last year, I travelled all the way to London to go and interview, which you can see on YouTube, by the way. Well, not see, it's audio, but it's on YouTube. You can hear it on YouTube. It's in 2 parts, and it's all on there. Just look for the Russell Brand Fancast. That's my plug over. And yeah, it's quite actually amazing, really, that this one person who, I'm just going to say it, okay? I'll say it how it is. There's one person who I actually really quite admire. As I'm sitting in my office where I record the podcast, I have a picture from a website which I can't remember, of Russell and Matt. It's one where they've done like they sort of make it into sort of, looks almost cartoony. They've got no I don't want to say it's got no eyes, because that sounds weird. It's got no eyes, nose or mouth as such, but he hasn't. It's odd. It's kind of odd. I can't remember the website, otherwise I'd plug that. But I'm looking at it now, and it's sort of, it keeps me inspired in a way. So I can't remember what I was talking about. Yeah, so it's really odd to think that it's the same guy. I think that's the thing that gets me when I talk about Rebrand, is that same bloke. Is that bloke that I went to see perform? Is that bloke I managed to get backstage and meet? Is that bloke I went to London to meet? Because although they're both called Russell Brand, they both sound the same. I know I said earlier they don't look the same. I suppose there's similarities, I guess, because obviously it is the same bloke, but his personality is so different now. I guess that's the main thing is that I'm trying to get across. Although, we all know Russell is very much, the clown. I don't think he'd like to be called the clown, but he's very much, he's the funny man. You can always guarantee if Russell's doing something, it's gonna be funny. I guess that's the main thing. And even if you listen to Under the Skin, which is very, very much giving you information, it's very academic. He still makes it funny, which is amazing, really. Because I don't know about you, but for me, when I found out he was going to do something that was a bit more academic, I thought, doesn't sound like my kind of thing, really. But when I listened to it, I thought, do you know what? That's brilliant. It's actually it speaks to you in a whole different way, actually. So yeah, that is the amazing thing about Russell, I guess, is that he could take something, a conversation with a real proper academic, knows what they're talking about, and just make it funny, but also make it factual, make it intellectual, and just make it real interesting. Listen, for me, I stick it on in the car and just as I'm driving along, just have a listen, because when back in the day when I used to do a bit of running, I'd stick the podcasts on then, while I'm out there trying my hardest. I'd have a little listen to a bit of Under the Skin then. So when you go from Rebrand, if you've not seen it, get it up on YouTube, right? Honestly, get it up on YouTube. The ones I recommend, obviously, Dad Fight, Wanky Wanky. I'm sure it's called Wanky Wanky. Something like that anyway. That's what I might have just named it that myself. And what's my other favourite? My Old Tart, that's quite funny. My Old Tart, he basically he goes on a date with some old lady and gets off with her. This basically sums it up. But all these kinds of things that they did, I think, was Matt involved then? I think Matt was involved then as well. I'm not. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure on that. I think he is though. I think he is accredited on that. So, in fact, he is on that. So yeah, it's funny. It's funny. It is a funny show. On Dad Fight as well. This is the bit I wanted to talk about actually on Dad Fight. There's a bit where he's talking to someone ultimately about the fight he's going to have with his dad. Well, it's not a fight, a boxing match with his dad. And there's a bit where he says, they're talking about the condition of him and talking about the condition of his dad. And he says, he says that he takes drugs and he says he's on alcohol. And it just really hits home to think actually, was it a cry for help? Don't know. He would probably say not, but who knows? Obviously, if I ever manage to get a second interview, I'd definitely like to talk to him a little bit more about Rebrand in a way, because it fascinates me. If you ever got to listen to the old Russell Brand Fancasts that from, I think it's last year and the year before, we talked about Rebrand then, probably not in as much detail as this time around actually, but I think I probably said something very similar along the lines of about Dad Fight, because it's actually quite an interesting thing to watch, and it's an interesting thing to see. I very much recommend it. Get it on YouTube. As soon as you finish listening to this absolute nonsense, get it on YouTube. You won't be disappointed. So as I said before, guys, check out my interview with Russell on YouTube. It's on there for you to see. Well, not to see, to hear. Just search for the Russell Brand Fancast. It's on there. Have a listen. You'll hear me sounding like a complete little nitwit. Oh, I love you, Russell. And have a look at Rebrand. I very much recommend looking at Rebrand. It's an interesting piece of TV, let's put it that way. And I believe all 6 episodes are available on YouTube somewhere. So have a little look at it. I know I've only talked about like 2 or 3 episodes, or 2 episodes, the mention of a third. But there's so much more to it. I very much recommend it. We'll come back to this and we'll talk about this at a later date. Make sure you leave us a voicemail message to be involved in the next episode, where we can carry on talking about Rebrand. We could talk about Under the Skin. We could talk about all the other amazing things that Russell's done. Anything Russell Brand, we can talk about. If you're a part of the MMAs, I do plan on doing a Matt Morgan episode. So start getting messages in for that one as well, where we will talk about Matt. We'll talk about Matt and Russell together. We're going to talk about all of this stuff. There's not going to be a stone unturned by the time we're finished with the Russell Brand Fancast. I promise you that. There'll be no stone unturned. My wish is, and my plan is, I want to get Russell back on here. I've got a few more questions for him. And I'd quite like to get, now, I mean, this is testing, but my plan is I'd like to get Ron Brand on, just for a little chat. Whether we'll do it or not, I don't know. Probably not, I would imagine, but who knows? Obviously, it'd be nice to get Barbara on. Obviously, we all know that she had the accident earlier this year. I should imagine she's recovering from that, and so I'm not going to bother her, not yet. We'll work on that at another time. But Russell and Ron, hopefully, all being well, I can get at least one of them on, in the next 12 months. So if you are Russell or you are Ron and you'd like to be on, just send me a message. I'll be more than happy to speak to you about getting you on. We'll have a little chat, and then we'll get you on the actual podcast itself, which would be amazing, wouldn't it? But go over and check out on YouTube my interview with Russell, and of course, not forgetting producer Gareth Roy on there as well. Me and my mate Dan went over to London in June last year, and we had a bit of a chat with him. As you would imagine, it's got Russell in it, so of course it's funny. But there's some pretty amazing anecdotes, and there's some stories in there that I certainly hadn't heard before. So maybe you have heard them, maybe you haven't, but it's definitely worth checking it out. Thanks for listening to the Russell Brand Fancast, episode 1. It's not, but all the others have been deleted, so it's episode 1. And make sure you like us, subscribe, and get your messages in. If you want to be a co-host on the next podcast, go on Facebook and search for the Russell Brand Fancast production group, where I'll accept you onto there, and I'll post the schedule on there. And then if you're free, all you need is the Anchor podcasting app, which is free, and you can join in next time. Thanks for listening. Speak to you soon.